we have to get into one of the most hidden parts of our story. Not the cute classroom version, the gap. The black hole between the fall of African kingdoms and the slave ships showing up in American textbooks like they just spawned out of nowhere. The gap between empires and chains. Between Benin City and Jim Crow. Between Kemet and your block. This is the story of the conquest.
You keep saying conquest. But in school they keep saying they just needed slaves for labor. Cotton, sugar, tobacco. They make it sound like a business plan got a little too far.
If it was just about cheap labor, they wouldn't have burned whole cities to the ground. They wouldn't have buried kingdoms under dirt and lies. No, little scribe, it wasn't just slavery. It was erasure.
This wasn't only, we need workers. It was a colonial cleansing, a campaign to hide every trace of African brilliance, every record of African order, every example of African power that existed before Europe rose up bloody and confused out of its own dark ages.
In 1897, British forces under Admiral Harry Rawson marched into Benin City. They called it an expedition. In real words, genocide. They looted the city. They burned it. They blew it apart, reduced it to rubble and trophies. Rawson didn't get tried for crimes against humanity. He got promoted. Governor of New South Wales. Medals. Applause.
So they didn't just go get slaves. They erased the whole evidence that we even had cities like that.
Benin wasn't a one-time thing. Look at their roll call. King Leopold II of Belgium, credited with killing over 10 million African people in the Congo, enough to fill every NFL stadium in America 3 times. General Lothar von Trotha led the genocide of the Herero people in Namibia from 1904 to 1907. After they dared to resist German rule, they were hunted, driven into the desert, their water poisoned. And this is after centuries of Arab and European slave trades. This was the cleanup phase, the finishing move. Africa wasn't the only target. Far away, on an island called Tasmania, lived the black people who'd been there for around 40,000 years. Floods came. Disease came. Their numbers dropped. Europeans wanted that land. In 1833, a man named George Augustus Robinson, backed by Lieutenant Governor George Arthur, stepped in. He was a preacher, a religious man. He came peacefully, talked soft, held a Bible. The Tasmanians knew him, trusted him. He offered them protection by moving the last 200 surviving Tasmanian people to a smaller island called Flinders Island. 14 years later, from 200, only 47 remained. Then 45, then 2, then none. The Tasmanian people were wiped out so the land could be taken.
So religion was the front door. The priest walks in first, then the soldiers follow.
That was the pattern. Missionaries bringing food, Bibles, civilization, but really doing recon, mapping the land, studying the people, finding weaknesses. Later, the generals arrive. Guns, flags, decrees. And then come the excuses. The same script played in the Caribbean, among the Taino people, the original people of Jamaica, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, the Bahamas, parts of Cuba, what we now call Latin America. Columbus didn't discover them, he invaded them. He and his men were brutal. They raped, they tortured, they hanged people 13 at a time, 1 for Jesus and 12 for the apostles. They set dogs on people, ripped men, women, and children apart, burned villages, spread disease. Within the first months, they had already killed half the Taino population. So many died, they had to start importing Africans to keep the system running. And while all that was happening, they were teaching Christianity.
So when people in Puerto Rico, DR, Brazil say, "We've always been here," they're standing on top of all this?
Yes, you exist because of rape, conquest, and mixing between invaders and the remnants of the original Black and Taino people. You're real. Your culture is real. Your suffering is real. But the story they gave you about how you got there, that's edited. Hard. If you are of mixed race, you are not indigenous in the original sense. You are a blend of peoples who were there before you. That's not an insult, it's a fact. Most Latinos were shaped by original African and Taino populations, later European invaders from Spain and Portugal, and in some cases, Mongoloid-type peoples who came across ice bridges later. Spain itself was once called Hispania by the Romans. The languages of Latin America, Spanish and Portuguese, are Romance languages, languages of Rome. So when people in Puerto Rico and DR speak Spanish, you're literally speaking a Roman language brought through Spanish conquest backed by Roman power.
So when they call themselves Spanish, they're actually claiming the colon.
Some knowingly, some unconsciously. But yes, your tongue is Roman. Your borders are colonial. Your blood is mixed. Modern science, when it's honest, already admitted it. Geneticists studying pigmentation found that light-skinned Europeans and Asians carry mutations of genes that existed first in dark-skinned people. One researcher said straight up, not only did light-skinned people evolve from dark-skinned people, but lighter-skinned people are actually mutants of dark-skinned people. Anthropologists tracing lineages discovered that the oldest DNA on the planet goes back to African people, like the San in southern Africa. Skulls from ancient Brazil, like the famous Lucia, don't look European and don't look like later so-called Native Americans. They look closer to African types. The giant Olmec heads in Mexico, huge stone heads with African features, predate Columbus by centuries. So before Columbus ever got lost on his way to India, Black people had already been in the Americas, sailing, trading, building. Now here's the part that's hard to swallow. Not every Black face in this story is a victim. Some were operators. Pedro Alonso Niño, African navigator, sailed with Columbus, known as El Negro, piloted the Santa Maria. Later, he led his own expedition, came back rich, then died in prison after not paying the king his cut. Juan Garrido, born in Africa, taken to Seville as a slave, joined expeditions to the Caribbean, sailed with Ponce de León in 1513, fought with Cortés in the invasion of Mexico, helped conquer Tenochtitlan, the heart of the Aztec world. These weren't random Africans who just stumbled onto a ship. These were Moors, Black people aligned with European crowns, working for Spain, for Rome, helping map, infiltrate, and conquer.
So we had Black people helping Europeans wipe out other Black and indigenous people?
Yes, the same way you see now. Some of our own people in high positions helping maintain systems that crush us. Back then, the Moors had knowledge of navigation, knowledge of geography, knowledge of African and American shores. They used that, instead of freeing their people, to serve empire. After the Romans and Arabs struck their deals and Islam began to spread, you get the Arab slave trade exploding. African rulers were pressured, convert to Islam or be isolated. If you weren't Muslim, you could be attacked, ignored in trade, cut off from resources. So some African elites converted for political reasons. Others were forced. And the Moors, Black scholars, sailors, mathematicians, became middlemen. They helped Arabs and Europeans navigate African coasts, penetrate inland, identify which kingdoms had wealth, and later, which could be broken. They had a choice. They chose status. They chose survival with the conqueror.
So when people brag, we're Moors, they're bragging about the same group that helped Europe rise over Africa?
The older Moors, before they sold out, brought knowledge, science, architecture. They helped pull Europe out of the Dark Ages. But many of the later Moors became buffers, translators, brokers. They wore gold, turbans, diamonds, while their cousins were being shipped like cargo. They helped build the White House, helped on the Constitution, helped craft treaties like the Treaty of Peace and Friendship between Morocco and the US. To empire, they were good blacks, useful, controllable. Fast forward, slavery ends. Black people are free, on paper. No land, no resources, traumatized, Christianized, poor. Into that chaos stepped new prophets. Noble Drew Ali, born 1886, claims he traveled to Egypt with gypsies. No photos, no proof. Says he met Egyptian mystics who told him he was a prophet, a reincarnation of Jesus, Muhammad, and more. He returns with a remix of the Quran, the Aquarian Gospel of Jesus the Christ, teachings that black people in America are Moors and Asiatics. He founds the Canaanite Temple in New Jersey, 1913, then later the Moorish Science Temple in Chicago. At the same time, an enigmatic figure, Fard Muhammad, W.D. Fard, appears and founds what becomes the Nation of Islam. Connections appear between Moorish Science Temple, Nation of Islam, Masonic orders, and even Nazi sympathizers. Behind the scenes, money, intelligence operations, infiltration.
So after slavery, instead of letting us rebuild ourselves, they planted new religious traps?
They knew you needed structure. They knew you needed identity. So they gave you ready-made ones. Moors, Hebrews, black Muslims, Afro this, Afro that. Some leaders might have started sincere, but any group that gained too much traction got co-opted, funded, watched, or killed. Look around the world. Ruins in India, no one lives there. Ruins in Thailand, Cambodia, China, Japan, all tourist zones. Ruins in Egypt, Nubia, Mesoamerica, fenced off, ticket booths. Anywhere ancient power was built, the descendants of those builders are pushed far away.
Why?
Because the energy is still there. Those sites are like old hard drives, still humming with data. They don't want you sleeping under pyramids. They don't want you reconnecting with that frequency.
And Crowley, the occult dude who tried to sleep in the Great Pyramid?
He tried. He wanted the power. He studied the rituals. He knew the words. But he didn't have melanin to fully activate those gateways. His pineal gland was calcified. So he hit a wall. He couldn't feel what your ancestors felt, couldn't do what they did. So he turned to drugs, sex, and spectacle. A genius trapped in the wrong frequency band. They know melanin isn't just color. It's an interface, a biological antenna. That's why. They flood your environment with poison, keep your diet trash, distract you with materialism and fake power. Because a fully conscious, fully healthy, fully activated melanated population wouldn't be so easy to control. There's a science called epigenetics. It studies how memories, traumas, tendencies can be passed down through generations without changing the DNA sequence itself. You can pass down traits, fears, even spiritual instincts. Once upon a time, your lineage was passing down Kemetic knowledge, mystery school disciplines, understanding of the soul and the cosmos. The conquest changed that. They needed you to stop passing down star maps, Medu Necha, rituals for activating the Ka and Ba, and start passing down chains, fear, submission, Bible verses that justify your oppression. They kidnapped your epigenetic memory and replaced it with a slave memory.
So that's why we feel disconnected from something, but don't know what it is.
Exactly. The talents you have, The way some of you just know music, math, movement, mysticism. That's the DNA waking back up. As knowledge returns, the code starts repairing itself. That's why they're getting nervous. Why now, slowly, carefully, they're changing history books, telling Swedish kids humans came from Africa. They have to ease into the truth, or the whole structure collapses overnight. This is why real conscious people go back to Kemet, not because it's trendy, but because Christianity is a remix of older African stories. Islam is a political religious project that rose after Rome and Arab alliances. Judaism rewrites older Near Eastern and African cosmologies. Moorish, Hebrew, nation, all these groups are later responses to conquest. Kemet is where the science was whole, the spirituality was encoded. The architecture, math, astronomy, alchemy were parts of a single system. Everything else? Bootlegs, watered down, weaponized. The Bible, Quran, Torah, they speak in parables and allegories because the real thing was taken from stone walls and temple halls and put into controlled texts. So you, Huti, at some point have to return to where your ancestor left the knowledge. They left it there for you to figure out. In this very cave, you must commit to make that your conquest. The center is Kemet. The center is Africa. The center is you.
Well, I have $8. Maybe I can try to save up money, you know?
Don't try, Huti. Do. I will go in, create a place for you. Then I will come again and receive you unto myself. For where you are, so shall I be too.
Huti did not quite understand the riddle, but somewhere in his subconscious he felt it to be so right.
So when someone says, Africans sold each other into slavery, ask them about Benin City's destruction, the Congo Free State and its 10 million dead, the genocide of the Tasmanians, the slaughter of the Herero, the Taino and the Caribbean Holocaust. Ask them why every ancient African site is now a tourist attraction where we can't afford to go, while others sip cocktails on land watered with our blood. Ask them why they call you Afro-American, Afro-Latino, Afro-Dominican, Afro-Puerto Rican, like you're an add-on, an optional pack, like you just got here yesterday. Truth is, we were there before the flags, before the churches, before the maps were redrawn.
Merkaba leans in, voice low, cosmic.
Knowledge is the first return. They took your history so you doubt your spirit. Now you're taking the history back. Next, you take back your mind, then your body, then your energy. You stop worshipping your oppressor, stop chasing labels they gave you. You look into the mirror and see Kemet, see Benin, see Tasmania, see Taino, see all that blood and brilliance behind your eyes. That's when the ruins stop being tourist spots and start becoming codes again. And when enough of you remember, really remember, you won't need me to tell this story. You'll live. They tried to redirect.